Today's video is about replacing a broken power cord. Actually, this one is missing the ground right here. So what I'm gonna do is just solder this piece on. So here are the tools that I'm going to use. My soldering iron, any good soldering iron should do. Make sure that you clean the tip and it looks like nice and clean like that, and it's not oxidized or burned. Some good flux. Now this is the flux I like to use, the Amtech flux. You can use any flux you like. This is heat shrink tubing. I only had white, but you can definitely use the right color. So this kind of stuff shrinks with heat, so it wraps around the cable and makes a tight, secure seal. The next thing is going to be my solder. So I like to use leaded solder. I'm going to show you. I think this one is 6040, but that's the one I use. You can definitely use any kind you like. I found that soldering with leaded solder versus unleaded is better, easier. It melts at a lower point. You're gonna need pliers and other wire strippers. Okay, so this cable is actually a little bit thicker than I thought, so you're gonna see me struggle here a little bit to try to expose the inner cable. Okay, so let's see. This is pretty thick and pretty hard actually. The one that I'm replacing is a little bit thinner and more pliable. So I'm gonna use these wire strippers that I have, and that tool I wasn't sure if I needed to use that, but here I'm going to struggle a little bit. Well, the first part is to fit that thick wire inside the tool itself, and you're supposed to just squeeze the pliers together, and it pulls and it strips the outer layer, protective layer of the cable. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward here. Okay, so I'm gonna use different tools that I have, those pliers. And the thing is, I'm being extra careful. That's why I'm taking my time not to cut the wires inside. You just want to take the outer shield out without damaging the inside. It's pretty tough, so those pliers didn't do it. So I'm gonna try to use probably something different. I have scissors, so I'm gonna try those scissors. And there you go, like turning around. Try not to press too hard. Try not to get the inner cables damaged. And finally, eventually, soon, it will come off. Back to those pliers so I can pull the cable, and it seems to be moving, and slowly it comes off. All right. So now you can see the inner cables, which are the ones that I'm actually looking for. So they are brown, green, and black, I think. The next one is going to be I'm cutting off the bad plug, and you can toss it, of course. And I'm going to expose the wire on the other side of the cable, which is the one I'm joining the new plug to. And you can see there are also 3 wires, obviously, but they are a different color, so we're going to figure this out. This wire and cable is actually a lot thinner and pliable, so I can use my regular wire stripper for it. Piece of cake. So here we have 3 different cable wire color: brown, green, and white. So we're gonna try to figure it out how to connect which wire to which wire, since the color codes is different. Piece of cake, you need one of those electronic, I guess, tester, circuit, electric, I don't know how you call it, just tester. And I'm going to put it on a continuity test. Basically, it doesn't make any sound until the two connect together. So you can probably see what I'm doing is I'm gonna connect one end of my probe to say the ground wire here, the ground plug, and I'm gonna connect the other end to each of the cable to figure it out which one connects to the ground. And as soon as I hear a noise, beep, and you're gonna see it from open and goes to close on the screen. In the background there is my tester. It says open. You can't see it out of the frame, but there you go. It actually beeped, or it went to close. So I found the actual wire that is connected to my ground prong on the end of this cable. And I'm going to repeat the same for each. I have a hot or positive on the right side and a neutral on the left side, and the bottom is the ground. I'm assuming that you plug into a receptacle with the ground facing down and the two hot and neutral on the upper side. If that makes sense. Most plugs are actually wired into the wall receptacle like that. So I'm gonna write down on a paper basically what color cable goes to which of the ends on the plug. So again, I have ground, which is the big round one in the middle, that is usually down. And I found that actually the green cable goes to that one. So there you go, ground to green from this side. Now let's figure it out. I have a hot or a positive that is on the right side right there. Let's figure out which cable goes to that one. So again, I'm gonna put one end of my probe into the hot part of the plug and look for which cable. And I found, I'm gonna find out. So it goes from open to close as soon as it closes the circuit. So the brown, you cannot hear it, but the brown, and you probably saw it on the back there, is my hot. And then obviously the last one is gonna be your neutral, which is usually a white cable, but in this case it's actually the blue one. So neutral, which is the left side, to blue, and you're gonna see it goes to close. So it's a closed circuit. Perfect. So now we need to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll figure it out which wires goes where. So here, ground is green, hot is brown, and neutral is blue. I next take the other part of the cable, and I'm going to figure it out the same thing. See, the bottom one is usually the ground, so I'm going to start first with the ground, put one of my probe into it, and figure out which cable it connects to. Here we go. So this one is actually color coded the way I've learned, which is usually the green goes to the ground, the white is neutral, and the black is positive. So here we go. None of them sound except the closed circuit on the green. So my ground is actually green here. The same on the other side. The ground was green. Now let me look for the hot, which is the one to the right. Again, to the right if you plug it in the ground on the bottom. So that's my hot. Let's see which cable. Normally, hot is black. And bam, correct. I close the circuit with my tester, so I know that the black connects to my hot. Now let's do the neutral, and usually neutral is white. So indeed it is the white one. It's important to know all this and to take the time to do these. Now I can match which color goes to what. Simply, I'm going to do green to green, which is the ground, black to brown, and then white to white. Now don't forget, before you start anything, any soldering, any attaching of the wires or cable, you got to put your heat shrinking tubing. You can't put it after that, after you soldered or connected the wires. So now is the time to put the tubing. There's no other way to do that. And I'm also gonna prepare those cable exposing the copper. I'm cutting the middle inner core, which is not used in this connection. I think these are just used to actually strip the wire or the outer protective layer. I'm using my regular wire stripper here to expose maybe about 1/2 inch of the copper on each of the 6 cables, 6 little wires that I'm gonna solder together. So that's the first thing to do. I also forgot to mention that I'm gonna need extra heat shrink tubing, smaller size, for each of my 3 wires that I'm gonna connect together. So in the next segment you will see that I'll be cutting a smaller size heat shrink tubing before I connect all these wires together. But for now, what I'm doing is stripping each of the wires about 1/2 inch and soldering them together. Here's a little tool I found that's kind of flimsy. It broke on me and I had to fix and put the blade back in it, but if you find that helpful, you can use it. It has different gauge wire holes there for different size wires, and you're supposed to squeeze it gently and turn it around like that, and it strips the wire for you, and then you pull it. So here's one. I'm gonna speed it up here until I get all the wires exposed. Alright, so all my wires are exposed to the way I like it. So about 1/2 inch ready for soldering, but before I can solder, I would like to add shrink tubing. Smaller size shrink tubing to these wires. So let's fast forward to that part. These are actually a lot smaller in diameter and they would fit over the small cables. So I'm gonna cut 3 little pieces just to cover the solder joints. And then it's as easy as just sliding them over. Again, don't forget to do this before you solder, obviously. You slide them to one side on each of the 3 cables. Alright, so now the next step is to join the cables together. So the preparation for this is actually fairly easy. You want to join them in a horizontal weaving fashion. I'm going to explain. That's how I learned how to do it. Some people may want to hold the 2 wires together and then loop them around at the top, but I don't like that way. I just like it to put it together like this in a horizontal fashion and then loop them around like that. They will be joined with solder, so I found it easier to do it like that because you can slide the sleeve of the heat shrink tubing over it a lot easier. So it's a question of just prepping each side and just putting them around each other. They don't need to be extra strong at this point, but they need to be connected, and make sure you're connecting them together. So I'm working on the ground, which is the 2 green wires together. Okay, so I'm getting my helping hand here ready so I can it's going to be easier for me to solder these cables together. I'm going to put one end there, freeze my hands to actually connect the green to the green. Trust me, it makes your life a lot easier if you use something like that. So again, we're gonna twist them in a horizontal fashion like that, get them nice and tight together. And then I'm gonna start the soldering process. I'm applying flux here. That's the fun part. Get my iron nice and clean. Get my solder ready, and I apply solder and let it flow. You will see that it will flow between the 2 cables and make a nice strong connection, and that's pretty good. Let it cool, and then we repeat the process for the two other cables. My next one is black to brown. Okay, let me show you the end result here. I'm gonna pull the heat shrink tubing over it, and it covers it completely. So the next one, I'm gonna do the same exact thing for the next one and the one after. Alright, so now we're ready to apply some heat. So you can use a heat gun or any device, like even a hair dryer. Here I have my own heat gun station. Make sure it covers the entire cable. Now, I wasn't too happy with some of the wires. I think they were showing copper. So as a precaution, I'm gonna also apply, in addition to the heat shrinking tubing, gonna apply a little bit of electrical tape to make sure there's no short and no wires are touching each other. Okay, so you tuck them nice together, and the next step is to put the larger heat shrink tubing over all of that So I'm gonna fast forward until I get to the heating of that outer tubing. Yes, so I took my time here to make sure that it goes all the way to the end, and it was getting a little tight. But basically here I am gonna apply some heat. And before I do, because I split the end a little bit by pulling it a little bit with my pliers, and you don't want the tubing here to be split because it tends to curl outwards instead of in. So I put a little bit of electrical tape, and here I am applying the heat, and it just wraps around it very nicely. Just take your time, make sure that you go through all around and that it's nice and tight all over. Okay, so it's all done. I'm showing you here my the heat gun that I use, the heat station that I use. So it's nice and good, and as an extra measure of precaution, also because it's black tape, I don't want the white to be showing, I'm gonna cover everything up with electrical black tape. Just makes it look prettier and more secure. Okay, so this repair is like done. Next thing to do is I'm gonna test it. So 2 ways to test it. Again, same continuity test, and make sure that that new plug that's sticking out is actually correctly connected with each of the other end. So I'm testing the ground to ground, one end to the other end, and sure enough I get a connection, a beep, and each was okay. Now I'm taking a known power supply here as an example. So this one works. I'll unplug the existing cable. You see the green light here is still on. I'm waiting for it to turn off. It took a while because I guess the capacitor inside keeps charged for maybe about 30 seconds. So I'm trying to discharge it. I'm gonna use some pliers, touch the ends here together until the green light is completely out. So I'm trying to short that, but it didn't work. You just have to wait like 30 seconds to a minute. Anyway, it should be off now. There you go, no light. So I'm gonna plug in my new cable that I just repaired and test it. The light should turn green again if everything is right. Please like and subscribe. Another successful repair. Thank you for watching.